I'd always loved road trips, the feeling of freedom that came with an open highway and the world stretching out in front of me. So when summer rolled around, I decided to drive from Denver to Phoenix, taking the back roads to avoid the monotony of the interstate and maybe find a little adventure along the way. I prepped my old Honda Civic, loaded up on snacks, filled the tank, and made sure my playlist was perfect for the long haul. The first hours were uneventful, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and purple as I left the city behind, passing through small towns that blinked by in the rearview mirror, each one a little more faded and forgotten than the last. By midnight, I was deep in the countryside, surrounded by nothing but endless fields and the occasional farmhouse light in the distance. The road empty except for me and the hum of my tires. I felt a familiar thrill out here. Anything could happen, and it was easy to believe I was the only person left in the world. That's when I noticed the headlights behind me, sudden and bright, as if the car had materialized out of the darkness. I checked my speed just under the limit, so I tried to ignore it, but the car stayed behind me for miles, never passing. Never falling back, just hanging there in my mirrors, making my hands tighten on the wheel, and my heart beat a little faster. Then, out of nowhere, blue and red lights flashed. My heart skipped. I hadn't been speeding, and there hadn't been another car for miles, but I did what I pulled over onto the gravel shoulder, rolling to a stop beneath a flickering street lamp that barely cut through the night. The police car, a black SUV with no markings, stopped behind me, its headlights blinding in my mirrors. I waited, engine idling, windows up, watching, as the door opened, and a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out. He wore a dark uniform, with no visible badge or name tag, and as he approached, flashlight in hand, I felt a chill crawl down my spine. I rolled my window down a crack, the cool night air carrying the scent of sage and dust, and tried to keep my voice steady as I greeted him. His face was shadowed, his voice flat and almost rehearsed as he demanded my license and registration. Something felt off immediately. He didn't answer my questions, just repeated his demand, and when I glanced at his belt, I saw no radio, no visible weapon, nothing that made him look like a real cop. My phone was on the passenger seat, screen glowing with a half-written text to my roommate, and I hesitated, trying to buy time as I handed him my license through the gap. He snatched it, looked it over, then shined his flashlight into the back seat, asking if I was traveling alone. I lied and said I was meeting friends, hoping it would make me less of a target, but he just stared at me for a long moment, then told me to step out of the vehicle. Every instinct screamed at me to stay put. I remembered something my dad once told me. Real cops always call in a stop, always have a badge, always identify themselves. This guy had done none of that. I reached for my phone, trying to be subtle, and said I'd like to call 911 to confirm. That's when he slammed his hand on the roof of my car, making me jump, and barked at me to get out. I froze, phone in hand, mind racing. If I got out, I'd be alone with him on a deserted road. If I stayed, he might force me out. I took a shaky breath and dialed 911, pressing the phone to my ear as the man's eyes narrowed. "Put the phone down," he said, voice low and dangerous. The operator answered, and I spoke quickly, voice trembling, telling her I'd been pulled over on Route 17 near mile marker 82, that the officer wasn't showing a badge and that I was scared. The man's face twisted in anger as he reached for the door handle, yanking at it, but I slammed my foot on the gas, tires spinning on gravel as I lurched forward. The SUV's lights vanishing behind me as I sped away, heart hammering in my chest. The 911 operator stayed on the line, asking if I was safe and if I could describe the vehicle. I glanced in the mirror the SUV was following, headlights growing closer. Black SUV, no markings. He's following me. "Please send help," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Keep driving toward the next town," the operator told me. "Don't stop. Officers are on the way." I floored it, engine whining as I raced down the empty highway. The SUV keeping pace, never falling back, never trying to pass. My hands were slick with sweat, and every time I glanced in the mirror, I saw those headlights cold, relentless, unblinking. The miles crawled by, my gas gauge dipping lower, and I passed a sign, Silverton 12 miles. I prayed I'd make it. Suddenly, the SUV's lights vanished. I risked a glance, nothing but darkness behind me. I slowed, breath ragged, eyes scanning the road. Had he turned off? Was he waiting somewhere ahead? The operator's voice was calm, steady, telling me to keep going and not to stop until I saw the police. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, and the road twisted through low hills. The landscape bathed in moonlight, every shadow looking like a threat. My mind replayed the encounter, his flat voice, the missing badge, the way he tried to force me out. I reached Silverton just as the first hints of dawn touched the sky. Real police cars waiting at the edge of town, lights flashing. I pulled. Over, shaking, as officers approached, badges visible, radios crackling, hands open and empty. "You're safe now," one said, guiding me out of the car. "We got your call. You did the right thing." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes, but as I looked back at the empty road, I wondered how many others had met that man in the dark, far from help, with no one to call, and whether he was still out there, waiting for his next victim. Even though the officers in Silverton assured me I was safe, the adrenaline wouldn't let me rest, and I found myself replaying every detail as I sat in the small, fluorescent-lit police station, hands still trembling around a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. The real officers took my statement, their questions gentle but thorough. What did the man look like? What exactly did he say? Had I noticed any distinguishing marks or license plates? I described everything. The black SUV with its windows tinted. Too dark, the way the man's uniform looked generic and lacked a badge, how his voice was flat and almost robotic, how he seemed to know just how to make me feel powerless. They exchanged uneasy glances, and one finally admitted that similar reports had come in from other towns along the highway travelers pulled over by someone impersonating an officer. Some robbed, a few never found. The thought sent a chill, threw me deeper than anything I'd felt on the road. They offered to put me up in a safe motel for the night, and though exhaustion threatened to drag me under, I barely slept, jumping at every car door in the lot and every whisper of tires. On the road outside. The next morning, a detective named Ramirez met me for breakfast at a local diner, spreading out a map and marking places where other incidents had happened. He explained that the impersonator seemed to know the back roads well, always choosing stretches with no cameras, no cell service, and few witnesses. "He's careful," Ramirez said, voice low, "but he's getting bolder. You're lucky you trusted your instincts." I asked what would happen next, and he told me they'd be increasing patrols and warning travelers, but until they caught him, people needed to stay vigilant. I tried to eat, but every bite tasted like dust, and my mind kept wandering back to that moment when the man's hand slammed against my car, when his eyes met mine and I saw nothing but cold calculation. After breakfast, I drove to a local garage to have my car checked, half expecting to find a tracker or some sign that I was still being watched. But the mechanic found nothing, just a few scratches on the door where the man had tried to force. It opened. I filled up my tank and sat behind the wheel for a long time, debating whether to finish my trip or turn back. In the end, stubbornness won out. I told myself I wouldn't let fear dictate my life, but as I drove south, every car that appeared in my mirror made my pulse spike, and every roadside pull-off looked like a potential trap. A few hours later, I stopped at a gas station in a dusty little town, and while I filled up, a woman in a faded waitress uniform approached, glancing nervously at my out-of-state plates. "You the one who called the cops last night?" she asked, and when I nodded, she told me that people around here had been talking about the fake cop for months, stories of missing travelers, abandoned cars, and strange sightings in the night. She pressed a slip of paper into my hand with a phone number and said, "If you see him again, call this. It's the sheriff's direct line." Her warning lingered with me as I got back on the road. The landscape growing emptier and the sky pressing down, heavy with the promise of another storm. That night, I checked into a roadside motel, double locked the door, and barely slept, haunted by dreams of headlights in the dark and a voice demanding I step out of the car. When morning came, I found a note slipped under my door. No signature, just a single line. You made the right choice, but not everyone does. My hands shook as I packed up, the paranoia settling into my bones. On the last leg of my journey, I kept to busy roads, stopping only at crowded places, and every time I saw a police car. I checked for badges, for radios, for anything that proved they were real. Eventually, I made it to Phoenix, but the relief was fleeting. The story followed me, showing up in news alerts and online forums. More reports of the fake officer, more warnings to travelers. I posted my story online, hoping it might help someone else trust their instincts. And the responses poured in, some grateful, some terrified, others sharing their own close calls. Even now, months later, I still look over my shoulder when I drive at night, and I always check twice before pulling over for flashing lights. The open road doesn't feel as free anymore. It feels like a place where danger can wear any face, even one that's supposed to protect you. And sometimes, when I pass a lonely stretch of highway and see headlights appear in my mirror, I wonder if the fake officer is still out there, waiting for someone who won't be as lucky as I was.